Leader of the UKIP Group, Neil Hamilton.
It's inevitable, I suppose. A certain amount of posturing takes place at the beginning of any negotiation, and the current Brexit negotiations with the EU is no exception to that. The First Minister wants to play a direct role in these negotiations, and there is, in fact, a useful role that he can play. He could write to Chancellor Merkel, for example, to say it's a mistake on their part to disconnect the trade talks from the other issues that have to be decided, such as EU citizens' rights in this country and vice versa, and also the question of the dowry that the EU apparently wants the British taxpayer to stump up, which may be as much as £60 billion, which is a bit rich considering we've paid them $500 billion in the last 40 years. And secondly, there is the other development in relation to Spain and Gibraltar, where it seems that the EU is trying to use Gibraltar as a bargaining chip to try to get a better deal from us. Given that the question of sovereignty in Gibraltar has been decisively settled by referendum, where nearly every single resident of Gibraltar voted to retain its links with Britain, will he write to the Prime Minister of Spain and also to the Chief Minister of Gibraltar supporting the Gibraltarians' right to self-determination, which is guaranteed by Article 1 of the UN Charter?
Well, firstly, it's right to say that there's a lot of posturing. That much is true. And there are issues that still need to be worked through. But the important thing is to discuss the start as soon as possible, and that the future of EU citizens all around in the UK and UK citizens in the EU is resolved as quickly as possible. I do think there's been a significant amount of hysterical reporting on some of these issues. It was said that the UK was using defence and security as a bargaining chip. That's not the way I read the Prime Minister's comments last week, in fairness. It's also said that Spain is trying to use Gibraltar. I don't read that either. Spain, in fact, has been very quiet on the issue of Gibraltar. It was just one clause that appeared in the Commission's negotiating document that has more to do with, not with sovereignty, but with Gibraltar's status as a tax haven and how that would affect the border with Spain in the future. So I see nothing malevolent in this. There are issues whenever there are tax havens that need to be resolved when there is a land border with that tax haven. It's absolutely clear that the people of Gibraltar wish to remain British, and that's what should happen. That was the decision of a referendum. They also voted 95% to remain in the EU. That's not going to happen. When I met with the Chief Minister of Gibraltar, he was quite clear that the last thing Gibraltar wanted was a closure of the border. It would be disastrous for the economy of Gibraltar. Some 15,000 people cross that border every day, and so it is in the interest of both Spain and Gibraltar that that border stays open. But of course, there will need to be consideration of what effect Gibraltar's tax status has on the European market, which I'm sure can be resolved.
Well, it's certainly true that it's in the interests of both countries, Spain and Gibraltar, for that border to remain open, because 40% of the jobs in Gibraltar are filled by people who live in Spain. And given that the rate of unemployment in Andalusia is 30% and in Gibraltar is 1%, then it's massively in Spain's interest to respect the existing status of Gibraltar and indeed its status as a tax haven for that matter as well. And so I'll repeat my question to the First Minister. Will he write to the Chief Minister of Gibraltar and to the Prime Minister of Spain supporting the Gibraltarians' case, both in relation to sovereignty and indeed to their freedom to set what tax rates they want in respect of the trade which is actually conducted within the territory of Gibraltar?
In fairness, the Prime Minister of Spain has actually laid claim to Gibraltar, or indeed commented at all on the issue of Gibraltar. The issue has come from the Commission, not from Spain itself. I reiterate what I've just said. It is a matter for the people of Gibraltar how they choose, what relationships they choose to have. They have voted overwhelmingly to stay British, and that's exactly what should happen. Nowhere should be forced to transfer to another country against the wishes of its population. That's true of any country, in my view. I've already met with the Chief Minister of Gibraltar. I will be meeting with him in the next few weeks. I'm happy to reiterate that point to him. In the discussions we've had, it's Gibraltar's concern about what Brexit might mean for their own trade situation and their border. That is what Gibraltar has been most concerned about, certainly as we look forward over the next 2 years.
I agree with the First Minister. He's absolutely right. The border is of critical importance to Gibraltar. But it's not as though we have no bargaining chips in our hand in this respect. If indeed it is the case that Spain has put its claim to Gibraltar's sovereignty on ice and is prepared to live with Gibraltar, that's well and good. But the idea that the European Commission suddenly produced this proposal in a letter without discussion with the Prime Minister of Spain is fundamentally absurd. Clearly, this is something which has been decided in the Council of Ministers, in between the Commission and, in particular, the Prime Minister of Spain. It is vitally important for southern Spain, as well as for Gibraltar, that there should be no interference from Spain in the economic life of Gibraltar at all. And I think, given that the First Minister was a strong supporter of Remain, and indeed Gibraltar itself, and the people of Gibraltar were overwhelmingly in favour of remaining in the EU, I think this is where he can play a significant role in trying to persuade the EU authorities of the good sense of coming to sensible agreements with Britain in the interest of us all.
Well, I've now had 3 questions on Gibraltar. I have to say I'm not responsible in terms of my devolved powers over Gibraltar, but we do have a relationship with Gibraltar. As I say, I've had meetings with the Chief Minister, and I'll continue to have meetings with the Chief Minister in the future, because Gibraltar is in a similar situation to, for example, Northern Ireland, although very different in the sense that Gibraltar is outside the customs union, and it has its own arrangements in terms of tax. But what is absolutely clear is that when Brexit happens, that there is no destabilisation either of the area around the border on the Spanish side, or indeed of Gibraltar itself. I'd expect that to be examined as part of the negotiations. I would not expect, nor I support there to be any negotiations about future sovereignty over Gibraltar. That matter is settled.